Welcome to Bike World. Welcome to the launch of KTM's big Super Adventure 1390. Now this is going to be a two-part test because the launch here in Tenerife is completely on the road. Even though it's a KTM, even though it's got a 19-inch front wheel, this is a road test in Tenerife. What we're going to do in part two is give it to our trained stunt monkey, Chris, who's going to ride it off-road because there are some new advancements in the off-road mode and the rally mode. So in a couple of months' time, we're going to get the bike in the UK or Wales and do an off-road test. So this is complete road test here on the launch in Tenerife. So welcome to Tenerife. Welcome to the launch of KTM's 1390 Super Adventure Evo. I think I got the title right. Lots to talk about on this one. I mean, look at the dash for starters. And I wanted to record straight away because I'm in the auto mode, no clutch lever, and I'm just letting it change gear because it's an automatic gearbox. Oh. So yeah, you're kind of experiencing what I'm experiencing for the first time. The dash is kind of like the big talking point, I guess. Let me go through the modes. So I've got street, sport, rain, off-road, rally, a custom map, which I've already played with. So in each mode you can see what kind of ABS you've got, what kind of traction you've got, the suspension, the engine brake, what the preload is doing, what the damping is doing, and the anti-dive. And that changes. I love this kind of lovely graphics as well. You've got some really nice easy graphics that you can just, as you ride along, just flick along, and it's really easy to do that. All the time I've got what gear I'm in and speed and everything at the bottom. I have got a collision warning, so if I spend too much time looking at the dash, I should get a big warning on the dash. Look, oh, menu. Oh, that menu. All the info. Heating, navigation. Right, let's pay attention, stop playing with the dash. There's a lot of tech, there's a lot of advancement with the S Evo, so I think the easiest way is if we go from the front to the back, and we'll try and test my knowledge. That's probably the easiest way. So if we start at the front, we've got a 19-inch front wheel, Dunlop tyres, Brembo brakes. The Brembo brakes have got 3 settings, and that's cornering ABS. When you go in the off-road modes, they're no longer cornering ABS, it's conventional ABS, and Chris will be testing that off-road. I wouldn't say you can feel the weight, but the brakes are definitely having I wouldn't say a hard time, but you're stopping a lot of weight with a lot of power. We move further up, we've got a complete new headlight. We've got an adjustable screen that's manually adjustable that you can do on the move very easily. We have slightly wider bars, new ergonomics. Pegs are a little bit lower and a little bit wider. The forks are WP and semi-active. So WP, semi-active suspension, controls both the front and the rear. That semi-active suspension changes depending on what mode you're in, and there are multiple modes you can choose from. And the real big thing for me is this new dash and new switchgear. So it's an 8.8 TFT dash that is essentially an iPad. It's all touchscreen, it's very easy to use. The switchgear is all backlit and it is way more intuitive than I initially thought it would be. Me and Chris both used the touchscreen dash on the 990 RCR a couple of months ago when we tested with KTM, and we were really impressed with that dash, but this is even bigger, bolder and even better. In terms of rider ears, as you'd expect, you've got everything. You've got slide control, cornering ABS, semi-active suspension, you name it, you list it, it has got it. The only thing it hasn't got is wheelie control, but that's kind of part of the traction control. As we move further back, we've got to talk about the engine. That's now the big 1390s. That's 173 horsepower, 145 newton meters of torque, 8,000 RPM. So that combination of power and torque makes this the most powerful adventure bike in the market. The Ducati Multistrada is a few horsepower less, but it can't match the torque of this big V twin. The chassis has changed in flex and rigidity. It's a complete new chassis, complete new swinging arm. We have a front radar, so we've got adaptive cruise control and anti-collision warning. In terms of seat height, it's either on a low setting or a high setting. So the seat is not adjustable by the suspension. It's basically a question of unclipping it and clipping it back on. So the seat height is 847 to 867. Fuel tank is 23 litres and the quoted curb weight is 245 kilograms. Centre stand, standard. Heated grips, not standard. That's it, we've done it. I told you there was a lot of spec. So now I'm in sport. I should have less rider aids, different power, different suspension, and the auto box should change gear at a different time. That's the theory. Let's go give it a whirl. Oh man! The gear change then was like doosh. I don't want that. Right, I need to change that. I think once I get all my settings the way I want to ride, then it'll all come together. It's just getting used to it. Now initially, when I jumped on the bike, it's kind of like a little bit intimidating in a few ways. It's intimidating because of its physical size. It's intimidating because it's got superbike horsepower in an adventure chassis. And it's a little bit intimidating because you're blown away by all the tech and this huge dash. And initially, I kind of warmed to the bike, but then the more you get used to it, the more you get used to how the dash works, you get used to how the bike is. And for me, I have to get used to riding on the wrong side of the road in Tenerife, chasing crazy Italians. So in this spec, it's auto. That means, forgive me for giving you the very simplistic way, there is no clutch lever whatsoever. There is no clutch lever. It's almost like riding a large scooter. The revs build slightly and then it pulls away. So we're in first. That's the hill control on. And then it seems to release, well, about 1900, 1800 RPM, we start to make progress. There's a little bit of revs required and then you go forward. There's several options. So you can leave it in automatic. Once you're in automatic, it just works like an automatic car or an automatic motorcycle. It automatically selects the gears. What's interesting also is that you have a neutral and you have a park, like you would in most automated cars like BMW. But there at the bottom, so it's park, neutral, first, second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth. There's no gap between first and second, no neutral there. If you choose to change gear manually, you can either close the throttle and give it an extra close, which will knock it back one gear. If you knock it back twice, it'll knock back 2 gears. So if I'm in second, I can close the throttle and go past and it'll shut the gear. So let me, second, close throttle. There's a little paddle shift on the left hand side to go up and down the gears, or there's a conventional foot shift or gear lever. But the gear lever isn't connected to anything in the gearbox. There's no shaft that goes through on the gear lever. The gear lever is just an electric switch. You're kind of saying to the bike what I want to do, go up or down the gears. Now, depending on which mode you're in, depends on how it changes gear. So if you're in a very sporty mode, it'll hold onto the gear for much longer and it'll come back down the gears as you come up to a corner and you apply the brakes. If you're in comfort, it's really lazy, it short shifts, and it's sort of like dur, dur, dur. And again, you can change all this within the menu. So for example, if you want a really short shift gearbox, like you have in comfort, you can put that in the sport. So that means you've got a rapid throttle response, you've got a sporty chassis, very agile, because that's what you've requested from the semi-active suspension, but you can have a lazy gearbox. Or equally, you can have a lazy chassis, lazy fueling, and a quick acting gearbox. And all the time, you can override this. So for example, if you're coming out of a corner and you want a short shift because it's holding onto the gear too long, just go through the gears and short shift. It'll then revert back to auto when you come to a stop. So I'm actually preferring to ride it, when you ride it a bit more, using the actual gear selector rather than the toggle. There's two ways of kind of looking at this. When I first rode the bike, I much preferred to change gear manually and I missed the clutch. I miss the clutch because I'm a little rider, I'm a short rider, I need that balance point when I'm turning the bike around. I'll also like to have fun with the clutch. So I initially thought if I was buying this bike, I would buy the non-manual, I would buy a conventional gearbox bike and I wouldn't have the auto. But then on the final run, coming into town, there's quite a lot of congestion. There's British drivers driving hire cars who do not know what they're doing. So it was great to have the auto and just be lazy and just carve through traffic without having to do anything. There's no clutch, so I can't stall. When I come to a set of lights, I don't have to do anything. If you're buying a big adventure bike to occasionally maybe commute into London or into Leeds or into Manchester, you've got like quite a congested commute into work, and that's what you use your adventure bike for occasionally, then I can see how the auto gearbox would be favourable. If you ride a lot two up, because it's quite smooth, you're not going to get that crazy kind of headbutt thing when you're changing gear, because it's nice and smooth and nice and progressive. But if you ride it more aggressive, like I was doing at times, then I think you'd prefer to have the conventional clutch and the conventional gearbox. I guess it's going to be how and what you're used to. What I can say is, in terms of all the automatic gearboxes that I've tried in the past, it's difficult, but I think this is one of the better ones. This is really smooth, really effortless, and it changes very noticeably between the modes. I'm in the auto, but I keep overriding it with a conventional way of changing gear with a selector, just because it just, my personal preference, like I want a short shift there, I want to go back a gear there, so I'm just doing that myself, even though it says I'm in auto, and then it'll flick back to auto, which it's done now. There's so much torque when you're in sports mode in auto, it holds onto the gear for too long. You don't need to rev it. Like there, that's a little short shift by me. Not, oh, big crack in the road there. Oh yeah, dancer. You can drive it out of corners so hard because you've got the rider aids. It shouldn't be this good in the wet, I guess. Handling and dynamics is impressive, as you would expect from KTM. We've got a lot of power, we've got a lot of torque, and the chassis copes with that. For me, there was quite a lot of difference between a full fuel tank and an empty fuel tank. When the fuel tank's full, it requires quite a bit of input. I'm only a small short rider, and I find myself being quite physical to get the bike to turn. Some adventure bikes with a 19-inch front wheel on road biased tyres steer a little quicker, a little easier. But as that fuel depleted, on the last run coming down the mountain, it steered a lot better. The fuel's gone down a lot. I think we've got about a quarter of a tank left, and it makes a difference to the handling. I got it in the sportiest setup I can give it. Oh, cyclist. And it makes a big difference. Or, well, I wouldn't say big, but you can definitely feel that the fuel tank is less, there's less weight high up. The Dunlops have worked really well. Even though the pegs have gone a little bit lower and a little bit wider, I think I just touched them a fraction, maybe once. So ground clearance is exceptional, but that depends on which mode you're in. Because if you're in comfort mode, you get a lot more travel through the suspension, which will reduce your ground clearance. And that depends on how heavy you are as a rider and if you're two up. But for me, riding solo in sports mode, not a problem. The grip here in Tenerife is phenomenal. This volcanic tarmac is like race grip like. So it'll be interesting what the bike will be like when it's 9 degrees in London as opposed to 25 degrees in Tenerife. But I can only test the bike as it is today. Tyres and the handling is really good, really, really strong. So we're just headed up the volcano, and it's a little bit wet. But the grip from these Dunlops is actually really good. Torque is incredible. When you override the system, you only need like 4th and 5th gear, even at low RPM. It's got incredible power and incredible torque. If you turn off the anti-wheelie, which again you can do, it will pull wheelies. The only difficult bit is changing gear once you're pulling a wheelie, because you have to revert to the auto gearbox or do it with your foot, and the change isn't quite perfect. I need to perfect that. It's difficult to change gear whilst wheeling. Not impossible, I think it just takes a bit of getting used to. But again, there's probably only 3% of the buying public who are affected by how far you can wheelie your £20,000 adventure bike. What is really good is that if you want to switch a system off, it stays off. So in the custom mode, I had no traction control, and I made the cruise control conventional cruise control, in that it didn't have any radar, and I switched all that off. Because there was a few times where I went into a corner and it flashed up that I was going to have a crash, where actually I was in control and it was just that the barrier was coming towards me at an alarming rate. And I've had the collision warning thing flash up as well, because it thinks you're going to hit one of these barriers. So once you switch everything off, it is off. Even if you walk away from the bike for a week and come back, it remains off. And everything can be switched off apart from the ABS. ABS can be switched off from the rear, but not the front. But when you go off-road, you can have just conventional ABS. It's no longer lean sensitive. But again, we'll do that in part 2 when we get to ride it off-road. There's loads of little tricks that it does off-road. For example, if you've got the traction control set at a high setting and you can't go up a steep incline because it just keeps firing in the traction, then it'll override the system, give you the grip, and it'll drive you up the hill. But that's going to be in part 2 when we ride it. In terms of negatives, they're not real negatives for me. I just think KTM may have missed a trick or two. For me, one is there is no automatic lowering device. So Ducati has that, BMW has that, Harley Davidson have that, and there's maybe 1 or 2 others, which is basically a system when the bike gets to a slow speed, it takes the preload and the bike sits on the sag of the shock, and it means dwarfs like me can touch the floor. I never really had a problem touching the floor, but I'm quite an experienced rider and I know what I'm doing, but I'm always on my tiptoes and I'm always aware of the size. Add a pillion, add some luggage, add some extra weight, and I would personally like that shock to be lowered slightly. Secondly, there's no rear radar, which I don't know if I'm missing that or not. The only thing I'm missing is the blind spot detection, where it normally flashes on a big adventure bike that there's something coming on your inside and your outside. And when you're riding with 8 crazy Italians, you want that, trust me. Should the screen be electric? I don't know. It is on the BM, it isn't on the Ducati. There's loads of little things that maybe I'm being a bit too finical, maybe I'm being a bit too picky, I'm not too sure. Some people are going to miss, some people are not. So in terms of prices, the S Evo is going to start at 18,699. The standard S will be 16,999. Then you've got to add the tech pack or the rally pack. If you add the tech pack, that's another £905, which includes the rally pack. As usual, you ride the bike for 1,500 kilometers. You decide what rider aids, what you want and what you don't want. I know that's going to lead to a massive discussion below because some people love that and some people hate that. But the end price is going to be, if you want this bike in this spec, the 18,699 plus the 905 for the tech pack, which nearer, damn it, let's call it 20 grand. Similar spec GS is going to be a little bit more. Similar spec Ducati Multistrada is going to be a little bit more. The Tiger is going to be a little bit less. But it's difficult to compare them because like the Ducati and the BMW have the self-lowering rear shock and they have the rear radar, but then they don't have some of the off-road rider aids that the KTM has got, and they don't have this massive unique dash that the KTM has. So it's difficult to compare them price on price. It seems to be that the KTM is the cheaper of the big adventure bikes. It's been an interesting day's test, and I'll be perfectly honest, I think we need to do more. We need to do more on the road, we need to ride it 2 up, we need to test the luggage, we need to do some real longevity, we need to test the tank range, we need to test the MPG. We've had a bit of a motorway stint, but it wasn't really long enough. We need to do more. And we also need to ride it off-road. But in terms of first impressions, this is the bike that we saw in 2024. This is the bike we've been waiting for. It's got the most power, it's got the most torque, it's got the best dash, it's got excellent rider aids, it's got really good comfort, really good handling, really good suspension. There's a lot of things that this KTM is ticking, and it's probably market leading above the competition in many areas. The only way we'll know for sure is after we put some more miles on and after we put it against the competition. But it's been a long wait, but it's worth waiting for. The next part of this test is when we hand it over to Chris and he tries to break it off-road, and hopefully KTM will give me one for a bit more of time, and hopefully we can do a bit more touring and a bit more longevity. But this is the biggest, baddest, badassest adventure bike on the market with practicality, like this amazing dash and amazing switchgear and amazing rider aids. As usual, if you want to know any more real technical stuff, like the chassis is 70% less rigidity, and what you want to know about the extras, the side panels, the top boxes, heat grips we had but they're not standard, little cubby holes that we've got, and USB chargers, I can go through it all in more technical detail below if you've got any specific questions. Please click subscribe as always. The next time you see this bike, it'll be upside down in a ditch. And the next time you see me, I think I'll be off to America. Thanks for watching, enjoyed it, loved it.